This project has been created with the intent to show the viewer that Earth, as a globe, and the idea of space, space stations, missions to Mars, Star Wars, Star Trek, and any other related space phenomenon pertaining to a heliocentric model universe is a well-formed, carefully organized, and scripted lie. A lie perpetuated by Freemasons and other related secret societies in order to manipulate mankind's perception of cosmology. Please let me be clear by saying that I'm not glorifying any religion or scientific theory. My intention has and always will be one thing: the truth. No more, no less. I will offer various forms of information stemming from different sources of literature and media, from authors to explorers. These ideas put forward are to paint a very specific picture, a grand deception that has been perpetuated for hundreds of years. The lie from a geocentric universal model to one that is heliocentric. It is the linchpin behind a colossal deception which, once released, will cause a chain reaction and awakening with regards to our true place in the cosmos, not one of random circumstance as pertaining to the Big Bang, but that of a supreme cosmic intelligence underlying all of creation. If any of you watching are not aware already that Hollywood is owned and operated by secret society brotherhoods, there are many books on this subject, and isn't the focus of this video. What is the focus, however, are that these groups steer our consciousness on what to think and what not to think. They are masters of mind control techniques and have perfected these techniques on a military level before being introduced to the civilian populations. The term MKUltra is the term given for these thought control techniques, although there are many different terms as well. Here's a brief example of MKUltra hypnotic suggestion inside their media-driven programming. Remember that it's called television programming, meaning they're telling lies while you watch, and thus you are being programmed. Almost everything on TV today is this type of programming, more or less. Their methods are to hide information in plain sight. Why? Because if they're to try to conceal the truth would inevitably come to pass. However, if the truth is blatantly exposed in the arena of so-called science fiction, a cognitive dissonance takes place in the viewer's minds. And if and when the truth does surface, it will be laughed off as satire. Here's an example of many from one of the longest-running animated shows on television, The Simpsons. Lisa holds up a magazine worth $9, showing the Twin Towers in the background, together forming the predictive programming that was to be 9/11. This is not the only time that The Simpsons predicted the future with their program. The reality is that the show's creator, Matt Groening, is a 33rd degree Freemason, and is part of the Freemasonic Brotherhood that was behind the destruction of the Twin Towers. It's easy to predict the future when you're the very ones behind cause and effect. This is an example of many and lays the groundwork for the future examples pertaining to the flat Earth. It is of value to know that information pertaining to geocentric cosmology was accepted all over the world by ancient cultures prior to a little over 500 years ago. And before you think these cultures were primitive in their beliefs, let me remind you that they were capable of advanced architecture, energy production, agriculture, and navigation of their cosmos that modern-day man has only been able to achieve in the last few decades, or even years, or still has not been able to recreate to this day. To say these cultures didn't have advanced knowledge, it would be naive. These cultures the world over believe the Earth to be a flat, immovable center of the universe, around which the heavens revolve days, months, years, millennia, and beyond. It was only in the last 500 years that the understood and accepted geocentric model began to take a radical shift into the theory of heliocentrism from individuals such as Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and Kepler, who, by the way, were all Freemasons. It is from these members of Freemasonry that the geocentric model was shattered and the heliocentric model was created in its place. So let's begin with what we've been told. we are told that we live in a heliocentric model universe. The heliocentric design promotes a science based on an explosion of plasma and other elementary particles expanding outward to form galaxies and everything contained within them, to what we view as our galactic space-designed cosmos, with the Earth being a ball and solid planets rotating around a central sun, and it is gravity that holds these dense, massive spheres together. The Sun is the center of our solar system and over 93 million miles away, and the stars are millions of light years away. This is the education being taught in our schools for the last 500 years, up until this very day, and was first conceived by astronomer and Freemason Nicholas Copernicus. However, for thousands of years prior to this, Earth was the center of the universe, stable and unmoving, and the stars themselves were fixed to a cosmic dome, a giant celestial sphere known as the firmament, that separated the Earth from the higher dimensions. Between these separations contained waters that divided the fixed Earth from these higher realms. As mainstream opinion today would have us believe, the geocentric model is ridiculous, even laughable. I myself thought the same, and had a hard time believing a so-called flat Earth. But as I felt a need to investigate, I searched onward, uncovering more and more information. Have you ever heard of Auguste Piccard? Very few know the history of who he was or what he accomplished in life. He was never mentioned in any science class that I was aware of. He was, however, used as a model to represent some very well-known characters today. It's no surprise why his story is not part of mainstream academia. Auguste Piccard was born into a family of Swiss scholars, a Swiss-born physicist, inventor, and explorer known for his record-breaking hot air balloon flights, in which he studied Earth's stratosphere and cosmic radiation. He was able to reach almost 52,000 feet above the Earth. He is the only independent explorer ever to record his evaluation on the nature of the Earth as seen from his own eyes. In testimony based on high-altitude test flights, he himself stated that the observable Earth from above was shown to be, quote, a flat disk with upturned edges. This took place in 1931, 27 years before the inception of NASA in 1958. Here is a commercial for the popular cognac Hennessy. This commercial is especially interesting as it shows Auguste Piccard's high-altitude balloon flight to the upper atmosphere.
When a man reaches the edge, after he goes as far
where
as
there
any
is
man
then
can
shown to be a
possibly
giant dome. And then a breakthrough to the waters above. This is an obvious mocking members in the know love to do with the unwitting viewer, and would remain cryptic to anyone who holds a perception of Earth as a spinning ball in a heliocentric model design.
The pitcher, steroid Santa Claus, kicks and deals. It's a long fly ball going back, and the ball shatters the sky, bringing the ocean itself down into the stadium. And the ball shatters the sky, bringing the ocean itself down into the stadium.
Do you know how to fly those?
Absolutely. Do you get to fly to the edge?
Oh, yeah.
What's past there?
Don't know. We're not allowed to fly past that.
Let's go.
Our world was different. There was more.
More?
Much more. There is no way for me to prepare you for the truth.
If you watch the trajectory of the space shuttle, it doesn't go straight up. It always goes in a curve and out to sea. The point is that they actually go horizontal. The space shuttle goes horizontal. It never goes any further up. It goes horizontal, very, very low down in the atmosphere, because it drops its external tank while it's still in the atmosphere. So, you know, it's still in the atmosphere while it's horizontal, so it never gets any higher. And it goes out of sight, not because it goes too high, because it goes too far downrange. And it seems that nobody's ever on the space shuttle. And the proof of that is the Challenger disaster. In, I believe it's 1986, the Challenger exploded just after takeoff and killed 7 astronauts. But it turns out that 6 of the astronauts are still alive, and most of them are using their original names. And you can find pictures of them. They're using the same names, and they're doing ordinary jobs now. Teachers, lecturers, lawyers, whatever. But they're still alive.
There is a 30-mile perimeter restriction on the day of the shuttle launch. In this researcher's opinion, it's because there is no exit strategy for these NASA shuttles. NASA knows there's no possibility for any spacecraft to breach the Earth's firmament, and therefore, they create a theatrical production of a shuttle launch for the people to reinforce the space program within the conscious mind, eventually moving along the dome and then falling back to Earth by way of landing a shuttle or detonating rockets over the ocean, where it's then retrieved. Admiral Byrd was an American naval officer who specialized in the exploration of the North and South Poles. What is compelling about information found within his diaries and interviews given relating to his expeditions in Antarctica is the fact that his rank is that of an admiral, the highest rank given to an officer of the Navy. His missions to Antarctica were profound, as he stated that on one of his missions in 1947, flying over Antarctica, he observed mountains beyond the Arctic shelf that were no illusion. The mountains beyond the ice wall consisted of a small range that appeared to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion, and that he should have still been flying over ice and snow. To the port side were great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Navigation instruments were spinning, and the temperature was no longer freezing, but 74 degrees and warm.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world. Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the South is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up.
Now the question remains, if we choose to heed the information of an admiral about lands beyond the ice in Antarctica, How does that information make sense in a globe-modeled Earth, as everything on Earth has supposedly been already mapped? This starts to make more sense, however, when we apply the Admiral's words to a geocentric design. If the South Pole is not a limited range of ice at the bottom of a globe Earth, but rather represented as an ice wall encapsulating the Earth with more land beyond this wall, this makes sense not only for what Admiral Byrd states, but on a map representing the flat Earth.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit.
In school, I was just like you, probably all of you there. I tried my best. I didn't always succeed, didn't always do well, but I put my best effort into school. Math and science were kind of my favorite subject. I didn't really like English and reading too much, but I've since grown out of that and I enjoy reading now. And I played a lot of sports. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
Hello, my name is Steve Owen. I'm a teacher here at Riverside Prep. I'd like to ask you about the stress associated with the long periods in the space station. I'd like to ask Karen, what is the training that you get to cope with that stress and related psychological issues?
Well, for psychological issues, actually, when we are selected as astronauts, we go through quite a vigorous psychological screening process.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
When I was talking with the gentleman from Belcom, and we were discussing the lie, everything he was telling me was different from what we were being told was the truth. And at one point I asked him, I said, man, you guys, you lied about a lot, didn't you? And instantly he said, no, we didn't lie about certain things. We lied about everything. None of it was true. The Vector, NASA's official logo. If you've ever looked at NASA's official logo, both their official insignia and their official seal, you'll see that the most prominent object in the seal is a red swooshing object. They call that the chevron or the vector. If you ask NASA's Public Affairs Office, this symbology is featured so heavily in their insignia and seal, they'll give you what really amounts to the standard facile cover story for the unilluminated. They'll tell you that that is a representation of a hypersonic wing design from the 1950s, which was the time the logo was created. Not exactly the case. Someone might want to ask the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos, that was formed in 1992, why they chose that same logo. And while you're at it, you can go ask the Chinese, who formed their space agency in 1996, why in the world they're using a hypersonic wing design from the 1950s as their official logo. Then you can ask the Japanese, the South Koreans, Taiwanese, Malaysia, Mexico, Iran, all of these countries, even Bulgaria. They all utilize the vector symbology in their space agency logos for their national space agencies. It gets even deeper. You can go look at the individual manned program patches for NASA. The Mercury program, for example, a blatant use of covert symbology. In every logo dealing with the Mercury program, you'll see what looks like a number 7 in their logo. And again, NASA's official story is that they put this number 7 there so that they could pay homage to the original 7 Mercury astronauts. Kind of forgetting the fact that only 6 Mercury astronauts actually flew into space, because number 7 never did. Deke Slayton had a heart problem, so he didn't get to go up. So there were only 6 Mercury astronauts. Yet there's a 7 in every single logo. That's in the official mission or official program insignia for Mercury, as well as the 6 individual mission patches carry this logo. And it carries on to the Space Shuttle program. If you look at the Apollo logo has a big letter A in it. At least that's what they want you to believe, but it's not. Again, that's just a simple way of explaining away the inclusion of this vector symbology in the logo. If you go to the Space Shuttle program, the original Space Shuttle STS program patch is a triangular patch that, again, hides the use of the chevronic vector symbology. And that also goes for many of the STS-specific mission patches. Every single one of the International Space Station expedition patches carry the vector symbology. The Russian Mir space station used the vector symbology. That was their official logo. You can even go deeper and look at military-industrial complex companies. Look at the logo on a company like Lockheed Martin, 2 vectors. The X-Prize logo, Ames Research Labs, U.S. Space Command. When you get into the military realm, the United States Space Command, their official logo is the vector symbol. And when you look at the military's individual space-specific programs, all of them deal with vector symbology in their official insignias. And the question really becomes, who or what are these people paying homage to? And the truth, quite frankly, is out of this world.
There are different terms for the Freemasonic G. Some refer to it as God, others, the great architect of the universe. But because I believe that the Freemasonic heliocentric universal story relies solely on the existence of gravity, the G to me represents the notion of that gravity. Their gravity. Think about it. If gravity is powerful enough to keep the oceans stuck to Earth, why isn't anything else affected as strongly by this powerful force? Why do birds and bumblebees fly freely from place to place? Gravity would certainly affect them. Why does a helium-filled balloon rise and not fall? Simply because the proponent lies with the mass of an object. The lighter the object is, it rises, and the heavier, or more dense, it falls. Simple as that. Gravity is a created fiction to promote heliocentric cosmology. It is the foundation to the whole lie, the lie of the Freemasonic fraternal order.
This photo, Grandmere State Park. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon, should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky, up in space.
It's simply moving away from your perspective, as we talked about. It's not actually going down, just like a row of street lamps aren't getting shorter and shorter as they get farther and farther away from you. It's just an element of perspective. Anything operates this way. canals, tunnels, railways. They do not have bridges. They don't have to factor in the curvature of the Earth.
After over 50 years and thousands of hours of space travel footage, both by NASA and other countries, there is no exterior shot where the astronaut completes the simple act of panning the camera 180 degrees, let alone a full 360-degree sweep. This has never happened on any moon mission, exterior space station, nothing, ever. Statistics will tell you that this would have already happened by accident years ago, but it hasn't, and it won't. This is because of the rule they cannot break. The same rule that applies to television set shows that never show the fourth wall. Why? Because there is no fourth wall.
Many of us that view mainstream media have little awareness with how pervasive it is on programming the subconscious mind. There is no better example of programming than symbolism. As someone that has worked in this industry, I can assure you that everything seen in a TV and movie media production is not accidental in any way. It takes a big effort from the production crew to set up a motion picture. The choreography, set decoration, lighting, sound, scripting, editing, special effects, and more all go into the productions that are funded with many millions of dollars. So in awareness of this, when the viewer sees mainstream media, the members producing these programs are promoting two specific messages. In one, the scene, and 2, the unseen or subconscious. This type of programming isn't just a mocking of the viewer, but again promotes cognitive dissonance, because if the truth is discussed at a future date, many will think it's implausible because it was represented as fiction. Remember that secret societies are heavily involved in symbols, as they are tools of true power, not language. That is why advanced cultures like Egyptians, Sumerians, Mayans, and many others use symbols to convey their communication. There is so much hidden symbolism contained in Hollywood-driven media alone that it is beyond the ability of many to fathom. Here is the mocking media machine and its symbolism hidden in plain sight.
I'd like to be an explorer, like the great Magellan.
Oh, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore.
After the Americans and Russians sent aircraft high above into the atmosphere to take pictures of the Earth, what they saw in those pictures caused a great deal of concern within the military, because for the next 4 years, from 1958 to 1962, the United States and Russia were nuking the upper atmosphere for 4 years with high kiloton to low megaton nuclear weapons. In 1959, a treaty was then put in place called the Antarctic Treaty, now today signed by 50 nations, which has the Antarctic region, the ice that surrounds Earth, off limits to anyone unauthorized. Why isn't any person, group, or nation allowed to lay claim or even simple access to Antarctica? Assuming one could amass a team in order to navigate beyond the North and South Pole, it would be impossible in the conventional sense, as these areas are highly restricted and off limits to anyone without proper clearance. Why? Because the truth will then be discovered. The truth that the Earth isn't what they claim it is. That there's a dome with more lands to discover beyond it. That the plane of Earth is exactly what it says it is. A plane, not a curve. And history will have to be discarded and rewritten. Serious questions will have to be answered, such as if we are in fact not living on a spinning ball, spinning around a bigger ball within infinite space, and that we are in fact part of a divine created cosmology, what will that do to our understanding? What effect will this have on our consciousness? That's what the would-be authority is concerned with the most. That's what it fears, the truth. Because as they say, the truth shall set you free. The astrolabe is the oldest known astronomical computer in recorded history. Created thousands of years ago, it is a perfect measuring tool used to calculate a geocentric stationary design and has perfect accuracy to our present day.
This is an astrolabe. Pretty impressive, isn't it? This is the mater, the scales on the back. This is the rete, okay, do you see that? That's the movable part of the sky. And in the back you can see like a spiderweb pattern, and that spiderweb pattern corresponds to the local coordinates in the sky. This is a rule device, and on the back are some other devices, measuring tools, and scales to be able to make some calculations. I have here a model of the sky that corresponds to the real sky. Okay, so it is, in a sense, holding a model of the universe in my hands.
The question arises that if we are to believe the heliocentric model theory whereby the sun is almost traveling 500,000 miles an hour and the Earth is traveling around the sun at almost 70,000 miles an hour, how is it possible to map the same set of stars for thousands of years? If we are to believe that these ancient cultures had a complete lack of understanding in regards to a heliocentric modeled universe, and only understood a geocentric celestial cosmos, how then has this device maintained its incredible precision to this present day, especially when our cosmology is heliocentric now? Finally, the book that everyone should read, but isn't the easiest book to find. World Beyond the Poles, written by Francis Amadeo Giannini, the author who is equally hard to research. Giannini was a philosopher and once served as an Antarctic chart maker for the Australian polar explorer Sir Hubert Wilkins. He postulated that Earth was not a globe, but that the portions of Earth form a small part of an endless landmass that stretches forever beyond the poles into celestial space. The book goes on to say that it should be remembered that the so-called northern and southern ends of the Earth were only assumed. They were never factually determined. Further, the assumptive value was imposed more than 400 years ago, at the time when restrictions on polar explorations prohibited determination of factual terrestrial extent. In 1928, polar expeditions of Captain Sir George Hubert Wilkins and Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd did penetrate beyond the South Pole and discovered that land extended at least 5,000 miles beyond the original mathematized southern end of the Earth. Modern expeditions have penetrated into that 5,000-mile land extent, but its end has not yet been reached. The existence of worlds beyond the poles has been confirmed by U.S. naval exploration. I guess in the end, I'm not saying that the Earth is completely round or completely flat. What I am saying is that I have not seen any empirical evidence with my own eyes. We trust institutions like NASA with our belief system when they have been caught lying so many times already.
Minus 20 seconds.
Auxiliary enable, signal return. Minus 15. Stand by for terminal count at T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, vehicles armed, 3, 2, 1, fire. Missile away. Plus 5. Plus 10. Burn out. Good burn. Copy, good burn.